What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Stephen A. Smith and what's going on with him. Recently, an article came out that said that Jason McAfee was up for a $60 million contract, right? And some people said that this is really upsetting Stephen A. Smith. And I think no matter what money Pat McAfee get, Stephen A. Smith will be upset because it's not like his jealousy and resentment for Pat McAfee is not about money, right? And I'm going to explain and give my take on it because what Stephen A. Smith really wants is Stephen A. Smith wants the control and the freedom, and also he wants to present the image that he is a self-made man, whereas though all of everything that he want to present is what Pat McAfee is already, right? Pat McAfee started his own podcast, built his own platform, and then by the time he came to ESPN, Pat McAfee had leverage. Whereas though in Stephen A. Smith's case, he was actually, he basically to put it in other terms, he was built by ESPN. So he didn't really have any leverage. Now Stephen A. Smith now has his own he have his own podcast, but everything that Stephen A. Smith has is tied to ESPN, right? Whereas though Pat McAfee can walk away and still, and still be very, very successful without ESPN. And so it's more of a partnership, whereas though Stephen A. Smith is more of a he's more of an employee than a partner. And that right there, Stephen A. Smith resents that because he wants to project the image that he's partners and he's in control like that, whereas though he's not. And Pat McAfee, by Pat McAfee being at ESPN, it just it makes it obvious that Stephen A. Smith is not a partner and he don't have that type of control. He's not. He's more so ESPN made than he is self-made. And I think that's part of the resentment that Stephen A. Smith, no matter what amount of money, is given to Stephen A. Smith, he's still not going to have the freedom and control that Pat McAfee has now. Right. And so I was I was watching Dreamers Pro. And so Dreamers Pro, shout out to Dreamers Pro, was going over the contract and the deal that Pat McAfee may get, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to play the audio from that, and then I'm going to react and give my opinion on what I think is really going on.
See, ESPN and Pat McAfee are negotiating, get this, a new deal that could pay him more than $60 million annually. The proposed extension may be tied to the additional responsibilities across the network's NFL coverage. So then I went to go look for the report, the article itself from Yahoo, and I have it here. It says ESPN's Pat McAfee reportedly negotiating an extension worth $60 million per year. Pat McAfee's next ESPN deal could make him the highest paid personality in sports media history. According to The Athletic's Andrew Marchand, ESPN and McAfee's representatives are discussing an extension in the range of $60 to $65 million per year with an expanded role at the network, including potentially more NFL coverage, a possibility if the deal comes together. McAfee currently has 2 years remaining on his existing arrangement, which pays him in the neighborhood of $30 million per year per Marchand. When combining his production deal for the Pat McAfee show and a separate.
All right, let me just say this, right? The reason why Pat McAfee, like I said, did this kind of deal, his contract is not up for 2 years, is because of the leverage that he has with his original podcast that he started, right? Now remember, every time Stephen A. Smith is up for his contract is up for renewal, he has to go on a campaign, and remind his employers and the public of how important he is to the network. Whereas though you don't hear anything about Pat McAfee, like he don't have to, broadcast or go on a campaign and remind them, because he has leverage, and also his podcast is doing well, and so all of that speaks for itself. Now, if ESPN didn't want to continue to do business with Pat McAfee, they already know that he's going to be okay. And not only is Pat McAfee going to be okay, but he's also going to be a competitor, right? So that gives them, ESPN, more incentive to want to do business with Pat McAfee. Now, on the other hand, if Stephen A. Smith was to walk away from ESPN, they don't see him as competitor. He don't have that same type of leverage, right? Where his show can potentially blow up and really compete. Like Pat McAfee can actually compete in certain markets with ESPN, whereas though Stephen A. Smith has a podcast, but no way in the world will he be able to get the sponsors and the support that Pat McAfee has. So that's that.
Contracts or College Game Day and other appearances. Front Office Sports first reported on extension talks earlier this month, noting that the two sides were in early discussions. The structure of the new deal would reportedly be similar to what was already in place. ESPN's license the Pat McAfee show under a production agreement rather than a traditional talent contract, meaning McAfee retains ownership of the program.
That you hear that? McAfee is getting a production agreement, right? So that means that he, like I said, he's more independent. McAfee has his own staff, and what he's going to do, they're going to give McAfee a X amount of dollars, make $60 million or whatever per year, and he's going to pay his own production staff. He's in charge of his people who work for him, then the guests and everything that come on there. Whereas though Stephen A. Smith, every once in a while, this is the deal that Stephen A. Smith wish he had. Now he gets to say, he has some say so in who comes on the show, like suggestions and stuff like that. But bottom line, it goes like if he wanted to have somebody on there that ESPN didn't agree with, then they can scratch that deal. They can scratch that guest. Whereas though Pat McAfee, it would be so much harder for them. Like Pat McAfee can do basically what he wants.
His own staff and contributors and covers his own production costs. So his actual take home is lower than the headline number. His daily show, which runs from noon to 12 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN, with a third hour on YouTube, is currently worth over $17 million per year on its own. His game day and other contributions make up the rest. The Athletic also reports that McAfee's representative, TKO and Ari, Emmanuel, and Mark Shapiro, who also represent McAfee in Hollywood as he prepares to appear in director Peter Berg's upcoming World War II film, open negotiations with $100 million per year ask.
All right. Just imagine if Stephen A. Smith had, even if Pat when Stephen A. Smith got that deal, that he got, Pat McAfee still wasn't mad, because I'm sure that Pat McAfee appreciate the fact that he has more control. You would prefer to have more control over, what goes on your show than, somebody throwing some extra, some extra money at you. And so, like I said, it's obvious because that Pat McAfee is at the same network as Stephen A. Smith, that those two deals, like Stephen A. Smith would probably prefer to make less money and have the deal that Pat McAfee had, because it's more about control. You can be your own man. They try to censor sometimes what Pat McAfee say, but if he feels strongly enough about something, then he could say what he want to say and just deal with the consequences. Whereas though Stephen A. Smith don't have that kind of leverage.
The deal gets done, it would be the first time in McAfee's career that he stayed put on a platform for an extended run. He left the final 2 years of his cult playing contract to join Barstool in 2017. Then moved through WWE, DAZN, SiriusXM, Westwood, and a reported 4-year, $120 million FanDuel deal that the sportsbook let him out of early before he landed at ESPN in 2023. Oh my Lord! Stephen A. Smith somewhere crying himself to sleep.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like I said, because Stephen A. Smith is trying to put on this front like he is basically running the show at ESPN, where everybody knows he's under the thumb of ESPN, and he goes and he does according to like what they want him to do. Whereas though, everything, like I said at the beginning of this video, all of the leverage and in the image that Pat McAfee had, that's the way Stephen A. Smith wants to be seen. He wants to be seen as someone who has the freedom to do what he wants and has the control to do what he wants. But everybody know that that's not the case. And I think that, that is really what burns Stephen A. Smith up. Not so much the money, but the fact that, like Pat McAfee don't have to put on no front. And when Stephen A. Smith put on the front, he's fronting, everybody is calling him out, and so that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, I'm going to check y'all out in the next video. Peace.